radio listeners, you are listening to 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. I'm Kenny Horn.
And I'm Kyle Pepitone, and you're now tuned in to the Morning Buzz.
Well, kinda.
Every Friday during the summer, we're going to give you a compilation show of the Morning Buzz over the course of the last week.
We have it all, everything from the pressing news stories all the way to the weird and funny news that will be sure to give you a good laugh.
We will even replay interviews that aired, so you have another chance to listen in.
We'll even be posting this show to YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more.
So go ahead and treat yourself. Sit back, relax, and grab that extra donut, and listen to the best of the Morning Buzz.
Donuts.
Vaccine inequity inside the cutthroat race to secure doses. So, as you know, the COVID vaccine has been a big part of the news recently for a few months now. But across the world, the vaccination rates between different countries has been wildly staggered. Countries like Haiti have only just received their first batch of vaccines, but only enough to cover about 5% of the population. In context, that's about 500,000 doses for a population of well over 11 million people. And areas like Sierra Leone have only just vaccinated 1% of their population. So even though here in the United States, we're not even at 50 yet, but we're nearing there, some people, or some countries, I should say, are just getting past that 1% mark, which is, we'll talk about it later, but that's not what I was expecting to hear. But both American and European officials stated they didn't know how to handle the global distribution of the vaccines, and as a result, stuck to the domestic distribution of them instead. According to the Duke Global Health Innovation Center, Canada is currently producing 10.2 vaccines per resident, while the United Kingdom is making 8.2 per person, and the United States is having 4.2 vaccines per person as of early June. However, there are many reasons why these vaccines haven't been given out yet. Number one, the effects the pandemic had on wealthier countries were a lot more unexpected than we thought. And therefore, wealthier countries have kept their vaccines within the borders due to ongoing export restrictions. Additionally, the plan to donate the vaccines was poorly written out and underfunded. And wealthier countries have also been lowering the minimum age requirements to be eligible to be vaccinated. And as we saw last week, are looking into the possibility of booster shots, despite health officials saying the vaccines that would otherwise be used for booster shots be donated instead. Zimbabwean businessman Masiwa stated in a Milken Institute conference, quote, "This was a deliberate global architecture of unfairness. We have no access to vaccines, either as donations or available for us to purchase. Am I surprised? No, because this is where we were with the HIV pandemic. 8 years after therapeutics were available in the West, we did not receive them and we lost 10 million people. It's simple math. We have no access. We have no vaccine miracle." End quote. So despite the campaigns and everything going on in this country that we've seen in the past weeks, past months, celebrity endorsements, all that kind of stuff, there are just some places that don't even have vaccines yet or are just getting them.
I think we sometimes forget that that's actually going on, like not necessarily purposefully, but because, we have access to them. People here in the United States are actually, choosing not to get the vaccine. So I think some of us sometimes forget that there's countries who barely have any. And I mean, like, how do you even choose 500,000 doses for a population of over 11 million people? How do you even
Exactly.
Well, I mean, I have an idea of how they could choose, right? Like the wealthier, the more established, but how do you even, that's not fair. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Yeah. Like, how do you even just like send that little to like a country like Haiti in good conscience? Like, yeah, we know they're like well over 11 million people in population. And a lot of these vaccines even require 2 doses, but we're going to send 500,000 and, they'll be fine.
Yeah, it's kind of outrageous if you think about it.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I can understand some of these other reasons like export restrictions. Like we're not fully recovered yet. No one's fully recovered country-wise yet, like due to this pandemic. So like I can still see that there are some restrictions put in place. Okay, but they had a plan to donate excess doses to other countries. And the article said, yeah, it was just poorly written and didn't even reach a good amount of funding. So they pretty much just dropped it. And that's ridiculous.
Well, I remember just thinking about, like, isn't the vaccine that has to stay at a certain temperature at all times? I know it's refrigerated and all, but when you get to those different environments, it will kind of mess up the whole process of keeping it refrigerated.
Yeah. I mean, I remember early in the vaccine stages, I think this was even before the new year, that like whatever one it was, they had to be kept at really low temperatures, like sub freezing or something like that. I don't think that's an actual thing. But like, I don't know if it's gotten more, for lack of a better word, regulated since then. Like they can keep them at like normal refrigerated temperatures instead of like super cooler temperatures. But
I know what you mean. I just remember I know that to be a certain temperature, else the effectiveness of the vaccine just kind of exists at that point.
And I feel like if they did write out this plan to donate the excess ones better, they probably could have accounted for that and given the proper funding, probably could have made it happen.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's probably
if we can get a vaccine ready in a year, we can find a way to transport it by plane or somewhere.
That's probably where the issue with the funding was, just to try to make sure to regulate the vaccine temperature.
Right. Yeah.
I guess you were Cam was mentioning the temperatures for the vaccine, and it's not funny, but I was thinking about when I got my vaccine. So when I went to the spot, like they just had the vaccines laying on the table, and now I'm concerned. Yeah, like I'm not even like stretching the truth or like trying to lie, but the vaccine was just like laying on the table, and in my head I'm like, isn't that supposed to be like refrigerated or because I know that a lot of places like when we first got the vaccines and everybody was a bit skeptical. I know at least for my area there was a couple of like either senior citizen centers or something like that would have extras, I guess, and they would try to like promote it on social media where they would be like, oh, we have X amount of vaccines that need to get used today. So I'm here thinking like, I wonder if my vaccine was okay for me to get, or was it, as effective as it should have been.
Yeah, having them sitting out is weird. Kind of, they're laid out like samples at Costco, like one per customer. And then obviously you would have to come back in 2 weeks and get the second one. But for the sake of the joke, one per customer. But yeah, having them laid out does seem a little weird, especially if they still do, or depending on which one it is, still do have to be kept at these extreme temperatures. That's
what I said. And it wasn't even like the first one. It happened for both of them. They were both just laying there. I'm hoping it was okay, and they had a purpose.
I'm
for
sure
that.
You're fine. I'm sure they knew I want to believe they knew what they were doing, and if they didn't, they wouldn't have authority to hand out or give vaccinations. Jeez, words are hard.
Words are hard, but overall for the vaccines, crazy stuff, man.
Yeah, but what do you think about this quote from Masiwa, the businessman, who said, yeah, this same exact thing happened during the HIV pandemic. Do you think this is a little bit more deliberate than it seems? That these other places aren't getting as many as they probably could?
See, personally, yeah. I mean, it's kind of obvious that the larger population of those first world countries, they don't care about the other countries around the world, because you got to think about, you want to put it back to historical terms. During imperialism, they would want to you take up their resources anyway, and if they're able to eliminate the population, just use up the resources, these first world countries would easily be able to run the world at their disposal.
Right. Yeah. That's a very good point. And yeah, I mean, the fact that he's saying this has happened before, like, there's only so much you can blame on export restrictions and a poorly written out, underfunded plan. At that point, some of it falls on you. Like, I'll excuse some of it through, okay, yeah, maybe exports are a little bit harder to get out now, but you're also the government. You can figure it out. Having been the one put the export restrictions in place in the first place. At
Yeah, I
least
feel like
I assume they did.
we always kind of know, and I feel like it's always been like that some of us are just so used to it, and it shouldn't be like that, right? That some of the second, third world countries always
Right.
end up getting like the end side of the steak. And I think it's unfair, right? But I feel like I know that the Biden administration were like actively donating vaccines, but I forgot where I read like an opinion article, and it was basically saying how why should the United States always be the one to, I guess, help? But I feel like it's
Right.
like, well, we're the ones that are more fortunate, you know?
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we? These are
Exactly.
people's lives.
Granted, we're not making as many vaccines per person as like we saw like Canada and United Kingdom are, but we were like number 4. Like it had a list of a whole bunch of countries and like how many vaccines they had per resident. It was Canada, United Kingdom, European nation, and then us. So
Wow.
yeah, like you're saying, we are a little bit more fortunate enough that we can help. Whether we do that every time, I don't see the problem with that. Would you okay, let's put this in a more personal perspective, like a one-on-one person. If you held the door open for a person every time, would you just eventually go, why am I doing this every time? Why doesn't somebody else do it? I'm sorry, Crystal. I don't know what your opinion on the opinion article was, but that's something I can agree with, because helping people out shouldn't be an obligation. It should be something you want to do.
Yeah.
No, yeah, I agree. It shouldn't, like you said, it shouldn't feel, it's like perfect, I think, the holding the door analogy. Like, you're not gonna be like, oh my God, I'm sick of it. No,
Yeah.
well, that's being polite, right? Like, you just common courtesy,
Right.
just hold the door for the person behind you. But no, I definitely do think that, like, if we're the more fortunate ones,
Right.
I don't think it'll do us any harm, or make us go broke or anything like that,
Right.
to help other nations that are struggling to vaccine their people.
Yeah, and I believe you've brought this up in previous weeks, but we're reaching a point where those who want to get vaccinated already have, or for the most part already have, and what's left are the people who are a little bit skeptical. So, if you break it down, a lot of these vaccines are probably going to go unused, at least here in the country. So why wouldn't we send them somewhere? Put them to use.
I wonder if there's like a log where, because okay, so let's say the example that I said earlier, right? How some like, whether it was hospital, nursing homes, whatever the case may be, they had a certain amount of vaccines that they needed to use for that day. Now, I'm no scientist, so I'm not sure how, or a doctor, so I'm not sure how you having a deadline for vaccines to be used makes sense, but that's what they said. So I wonder if they ended up using every single vaccine that they had at hand, or if some of the vaccines that they had went to waste. And then I'm wondering if there's like a log where all the vaccines that have gone to waste, hopefully it's not a law, but we don't know. I wonder if there's like some sort of log or something
Like a
where people can
documentation
see.
of like, okay, this many were given out, this many, for lack of a better word, expired, stuff like that.
I would
I
assume.
wonder.
I would not. I would take. I would 1,000% guarantee that there's some kind of log for that. And I think that unfortunately the number of unused vaccinations is much greater than we want it to be.
Right, yeah, probably. I mean, they've been tracking hospitalizations, the fact that they can track new cases per state. Like, I don't know what kind of technology they have on hand,
That's
but
different.
like the fact that they can even go state by state, no matter how big or small the state is, and be like, yeah, we can say like around, like with good confidence, around this number of new cases happened this week. I feel like they can document what kind of vaccine or what status each vaccine received.
Actually,
For,
Kyle, it's even deeper than that. You know, it's each county. They can go each county in the country.
very true.
That's
Yes.
it's so that's like what that's like a typical day for the the government to track the number of vaccines unused. So that's
Yeah, that is true. That is a
I
good point to
just
bring up.
No, yeah, definitely. I think I'm not sure if they do. I'm trying to find it on Google, but I can't seem to find one. But I did find this article from NPR that says this was published back in June 10th of this year. And it says states say large amounts of J&J shots may be wasted if not used soon. And it basically says Ohio hospitals and health departments are trying to figure out how to give out 200,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine that are expiring at the end of the month. So I guess aside from them having to be regulated with temperature, they also have an expiration date. Well, obviously they do, but I didn't think they were going to be that soon, right? Like expiring the end of the month. So they basically expired, the end of June.
Yeah.
I wonder if they were ever able to use all 200,000.
Yeah.
I hope so.
And with J&J, that's probably a little bit tougher to do because that's the one right off the bat, it's the out of the three main one, it's the least effective. And also it's the one we've seen in the news a lot that's coming out with all these complications or possible complications. I don't remember if they knew if the complications were related to the vaccine yet or not. So, but still, it's always under J&J that it's speculated. So,
yeah, the last thing I heard of that was basically they didn't know with certainty, but it was like a common factor. So everybody who ended up getting sick, which was mostly women, they had all gone recently the COVID-19 Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So, I guess they were putting two and two together, like what's going on with them and what's the common denominator.
Exactly.
And it was the J&J vaccine. But that's crazy. I guess that's just one of like an example. And again, this was like earlier in June, so they could have very easily used all of them, but they could have also very well not used all of them.
Exactly.
So I'm not sure. But I will say that had they not been used, they could have. Right. They could have been donated to somewhere else.
Exactly.
But I will say though,
go ahead. Yeah.
Imagine they would have been donated. Like, let's just put a scenario, right? And I know people say you shouldn't do this, but let's just say that 100 from those 200,000 doses would have been donated, and then from the J&J, and then people get sick, like more people get sick. I think that would have just created a more
more issues.
Come on, like it would have been.
Well, it's worth mentioning, and this is from our station manager, Annabella. She just told me, but she said like there were complications linked to the J&J vaccine, but statistically speaking, they were like she used the word insignificant. So like,
what? Probably like point some percentage.
Yeah, it's not like 80% of people who got the J&J vaccine had these problems.
I suppose like it was just a small number of individuals that had issues, but that people, you can have health issues with a number of different things. So that's really, it just happens that they had the J&J vaccine, and so like, oh well, this happened with me, but I got it's a whole lot of different things.
Right, but
honestly,
go ahead.
I was going to say like this next comment is my opinion, does not reflect the stations, but I was just going to say like I personally went to get my vaccine, and I had gone to like this mega site, and it so happens to be that the first day that I went, that's the first day they started to give out the J&J vaccine. However, my personal opinion, I kind of don't think that J&J can be trusted, and so I was like, I don't want to get that vaccine, and so I ended up leaving and ended up going again and getting the Pfizer one. Um,
Right.
and yeah, and I don't regret that decision at all.
Okay. Except the fact that they were sitting out in the open.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Anyway, moving on.
In New York, there has been a high demand for waiters and waitresses since restaurants reopened. Because of the pandemic, many servers have moved back home out of the city, leaving restaurant managers scrambling for workers. This is resulting in less efficient service and an outbreak of universal jerkiness from workers and customers. Research proves that low wages, diminished tips, and a lack of childcare is responsible for driving the workers away. New York Times writes, start quote, one survey conducted between October and May by the advocacy group One Fair Wage found that among nearly 3,000 respondents, 39% listed, quote, concerns of hostility and harassment from customers, quote, as one of their reasons they were leaving their jobs, end quote. Pre-pandemic, 84% of New York City restaurant workers made less than $40,000 per year, with roughly a quarter of them receiving food stamps. New York Times believes that New York City's recovery will depend on how successful they are in spreading prosperity to the back and front of house, making it so that they are all able to live decently with what they are making. Okay, so I find this honestly not surprising. We just talked about it a little bit before about how people are moving from New York to New Jersey because of the pandemic, and now it looks like that there's a lack of servers in New York City and that they're scrambling for people, and I'm not surprised. And it's interesting too. I've noticed this, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this as well, but like a lot of people don't want to work nowadays, or they're kind of just used to this relaxed mindset of like kind of, doing what you want to do. And like, I guess I feel like the pandemic brought out this whole new like side of life to us in a sense. Like the part that's like, oh, like just enjoy life all you can because like you really like don't know what's gonna happen. Kind of like a YOLO like mindset. And I feel like personally I get that because this pandemic has made me feel like wow, like you really don't know what's gonna happen and to like live every day like it's your last day. But it appears that the same thing is occurring in New York City right now with these waiters and waitresses.
I feel like in the city, New York City specifically, you never realize time passes by so fast. You go to work. I remember going into work, working so many hours in the day, then going to school, then going home. And I lived in the Bronx. My school was in Brooklyn and I worked in Manhattan. So all of my free time I took in the commute. And I never had time for myself. So it's interesting how the pandemic brought that in a lot of people that, live in the city. I feel like when you live in the suburbs or any other state, time is just different there. And we organize our time in a way that, is more suitable towards what we want to do and stuff. So it does make sense how people are like, you know what, why are we working so hard when we're getting paid so little? It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, for real. And another point I wanted to bring up too is the idea of how the front of the house is treated versus the back of the house. And the front of the house meaning, waitresses, and then the back of the house being the cooks. And like the waitresses, they all make tips, they make good money. And throughout the pandemic, at least during the start of it, a lot of people were tipping more because they were thankful that people were actually out there and working. But the back of the house doesn't receive tips. So, not to say like, waitresses don't deserve tips because they 100% do, but it's like while they're making more money, the cooks who are sweating in the heat working their butts off aren't making any more money. And I definitely see how that's also kind of discouraging for them in a sense too. And even if you look at bussers and hostesses, some of them also like make a percentage of the waitresses and the waiters tips. Like they take all the money and then they like give a certain percentage to them. At least like when I waitress, that's what they did. And I read about it in this article too. So it's just, I could definitely see how being a cook, it's a little disappointing in a sense that you're not making any more, but like here are everyone else in the front of house is making more money. while you're still struggling and making the same minimum wage or whatever.
I feel quite bad for those people, because then like there's always like a certain amount of like effort you have to give to work, especially people who are like cooking. It's a lot of effort, like you said. It's in the heat. You have to know what you're doing. There's a specific skill level when it comes to it. And yeah, those people in the back aren't often seen, and they're the ones making the food, preparing. And many jobs that I know, my sister currently, she works in a restaurant, and she says that dealing with customers is somewhat difficult too, because on one end, like if you have a good team and you work well together and the people are nice, it's always fun to come into work. But then, like especially now with the pandemic, we could say somewhat subsiding. There's two ends of the coin. Some customers are still very scared and don't feel comfortable being around people who don't have masks on, or not being comfortable like in places very close with other individuals because they don't know who's vaccinated or not. And there are people on the other end who really don't want to wear a mask, and they feel upset that other people like tell them that, like the customers say like, oh, like, you know, may you stay away from these people, this, that. So it's hard to deal with both sides of the coin, and some people want their tables very sanitized and some people don't. So it's just kind of important in this case to understand and respect each other. And but I see where the customers are coming from with this anger, and I see where the workers are coming from. And it's yeah, the pandemic put a lot of things out of perspective for us, especially for these types of customer service jobs.
Yeah, and honestly, like, I don't blame these servers for not wanting to work in New York City, as waiters and waitresses, because doing a server job is highly stressful, and especially if you're not making a lot of money and you're dealing with all these precautions and just the whole thing. Like, I completely understand being like, okay, like, I need a break. Like, I want to find another path or find something that I don't have to stress about all the time. So for me, it definitely is kind of like an underrated job that they deserve a lot more credit than they get. I guess that's what I'm saying, front of house and back of house, because as we were talking about before, the cooks, they work hard. They have to know a lot, and they're getting paid like so little, and they don't receive tips. So it really stinks for them as well.
I'm questioning why it is that they get paid so little. I'm thinking compared to retail companies, the retail companies are companies versus the restaurants, which are, one store, or they may have three of them. But it's really sad how little they get paid in the industry when they do the most work.
I mean,
Um,
it depends on the restaurant too. It
mm,
does. Like, I worked at a brunch restaurant, and I know, like, I, as a waitress, I made more money than the cooks. So it depends on the restaurant and where it's located. Of course, I'm in New Jersey and we're talking about New York here, so I don't know the specific details about how much they get paid in New York, but overall, I do think that the waitresses and waiters during this time were probably making at least a lot more money than they usually would be making, where the cooks were probably making around the same.
I wouldn't be surprised if they start a movement or something
They
because
should.
yeah, it's really sad how you're telling me back of house, the people that are cooking the food don't get as much money as a waiter. That's so sad. I would
I
be so
know.
upset. I'm
And
like,
it's like, you
what?
don't you don't come to a restaurant for the service, you go to the restaurant for the food.
Yeah, for
Think
sure.
about it too.
That's the ratings you see too.
But like, not to
Love the
say the
food.
servers don't deserve good money.
No,
It's
they
they
do.
all deserve good money. Like, we all should be like getting paid like triple working in that business, because it's so stressful. It's hard. You need to know so many skills.
Mhm.
And yeah.
Oh, the skills are like, oh no. I'm obsessed with it. Like I remember I went to a restaurant and one waiter, she was a hostess and the waiter. And she asks, "Oh, does everybody know what they want?" So everybody in my table started saying it. She was not writing anything down and she just memorized it. She memorized the whole menu. She memorized like everything we needed. And I was just like, that is so cool. I wish I could do that.
I
And I'm just
completely
like,
agree. Yeah. I see that happening so often, especially like in places in New York. I've seen this in Europe too, how like some people, not only that, but a lot of these waiters they have a really nice, happy attitude. They're talkative and they're very respectful. Like a lot of these people are, I would say, very emotionally intelligent, very like optimistic, very like expressive. Like I would say like people oriented. They're like, they know how to deal with even like very uncomfortable situations. So like really kudos to them. Not only do they have to deal with rude customers, but they still like have the like energy to put on a smile, to remember all that, and how like to really give people a great time. So I would say it's yeah, it's not only the food, but the service really does play a big part in it too.
So imagine smelling spoiled milk behind the scenes of an ice cream shop. Many teenagers in New Jersey start their first jobs at ice cream places. This was the case for 16-year-old Jeremy Schneider. He worked in Applegate Farm, an ice cream shop in Montclair, and urges customers to be nice to ice cream scoopers. Details from NewJersey.com are that on top of dealing with the smell of spoiled milk and the accumulated garbage, he had to deal with people complaining about how hard, soft, cold, and warm the ice cream was. A story Schneider shared on NewJersey.com was that he handed an ice cream cone to a customer who then yelled he had given too much ice cream. With a long line behind him, he made Schneider split the ice cream between the two cones. I find that so sad. um, my cousin works at, is it 16 Handles? It's not an ice cream shop, but it's, frozen yogurt and ice cream. And I went to the back of like, the store, and it was just as I described it. It smelled like spoiled milk. There was garbage all over the floor, and she was the one that was supposed to manage all of that. And then I was getting like some ice cream because I don't like froyo. And everybody in the line, you just saw like 6 little kids running to get like the toppings and going crazy for it. And I was just like, wow, you need patience, clarity so much while you're there, and some people are rude. It's just a lot to bear.
Oh, tell me about it, Dashi. I worked at an ice cream place for 4 years, and I was manager for 2 of those years. So trust me, girl, I know. And the whole thing about, oh, like you gave me too much ice cream, that happened all the time, especially because I'm someone who like always rathers to get, more ice cream than not enough ice cream. So I
Yeah.
like to be nice. Like in my head, I'm like, oh, I'm being so nice. I'm beefing it up for them. And then these people would complain, and I'd be like, really? Like, are you kidding me? But anyways, I also want to say that, okay, they mentioned Applegate Farms here, which is in Montclair. In my opinion, that is my favorite ice cream place. I just want to say that, okay? I just
Really?
had to put that out there.
Oh, that's awesome. That's
Yeah,
great to
no.
know. Wow. Yeah, a lot of these people, like what I see, I used to work at a diner and I used to have to make milkshakes. Well, it was I would say a burger chain. So it was kind of like a diner. And I remember just like going to the back, and sometimes people like they would order these big milkshakes and they would drink half of it, so we had to take it all in the back. That with a combination of like people of like in the back, the cooks like throwing sometimes out raw meat, like the milk and raw meat. Oh my, it was not a nice smell, and it was like a lot of garbage in the back, and still like after a while you get used to it. But like if
Mhm.
people knew what you were dealing with in the back, and then you still had to clean and do certain things, and them complaining, it just sometimes I wish like there was something that the customers could see from the workers' perspective, to just like have this empathy, this understanding that okay, you have a lot on your hands. I see what you're like going through. I'll be a little more patient. Like the thing about customer service is that a lot of, this is just my opinion, I feel that customers often feel that because the workers are serving them, they're somewhat like below them. There's like
Yep.
this weird social
Yeah.
dynamic at play, that they think like, oh, you're serving me, or as if my servant, you're supposed to be there for me and do everything for me. And it's a very weird phenomenon that happens. I've seen it before, and I've caught myself like just not doing that, not being to be patient, to be kind and everything. Not, and I promise I wouldn't say anything rude to a customer, but sometimes so not customer, a worker. And I was like thinking like, oh, like it's taking longer, this, that, but to understand from their perspective too, that they're also people. Like outside of this position, if I would see them, I would be nice to them. But because they're here, like it's weird. People have these weird inclinations to as if disrespect them or like be impatient with them. I don't know. I feel kind of bad for that. Like it's a weird social dynamic.
No, it really is. And the weirdest thing for me too is like when I waitressed, people were so much nicer. For some reason, I guess New Jerseyans at least, they treat waitresses and waiters a lot nicer than they treat their ice cream people. Because I got treated so terribly at the ice cream place I worked at for all these years, and I was really good at my job. And like, I don't say I'm really good at a lot of things, but like, that was one of the few things in this life where I was like, I am really good at this. And I had people complaining about the silliest thing, the melted ice cream, the oh, too much ice cream. Oh, you had to charge for sprinkles. Like, yes, I'm sorry, I had to charge for sprinkles. I had someone throw change at me. I had someone yell at me that I wasn't moving with enough urgency. Like, it's just unbelievable. I've had people cursing at me, like literally the most chaotic things happen for me working in the ice cream business. I had to call the cops multiple times. Like it was insane, literally insanity working at an ice cream place. But nonetheless, it was probably like I made some of like my favorite high school memories doing this job because it was a lot of fun in the long run. And even though people were terrible, it was still somewhat entertaining. And like I'm a person, if something like, if someone's like yelling at me, like I don't really get mad. I just get more like, wow, like why, like this is so dumb. Like I'm gonna remember this forever and tell everyone about how dumb you're being right now. Like when customers act so unreasonably. So yeah.
I completely agree. I'm just thinking like customer service in general, people always treat them like they're below them. I don't know why. Even a few weeks ago when I was in the Dominican Republic, I saw people treating like waitresses or even in retail stores, they just treated them differently. And I'm just like, do they not see that they're people too? I don't know. It really bothers me when you do see that or your own family members like treating other people like that. And you're just like, who are you? Have we lived in the same house?
Mhm.
So I don't know. It's a lot to bear.
Yeah.
Mhm. Exactly, yeah, and just speaking out like to people who are listening to the airwaves and everything, just to like our morning buzz. Yeah, it's just important to remember that customer service, it's an amazing like place to make memories. Like a lot of I see a lot of like students do this job, but it is demanding. So just having that other side, that perspective, that understanding that people are there to not only make money but to like give a contribution, to have a great time, to remember like what we are all here for. We're here to kind of work together. So like if something is slower, or if a system is down, or if like people are getting delayed, to have that primary sense of empathy, or like that kind of pause before the anger sets in, just to have that understanding that like sometimes they're trying their best but not everything always works out on time, or that like maybe there's a lot of customers. So just to like wherever you are a customer, worker, just to have that mutuality, that like that deeper understanding, like okay, I get you.
Yeah.
Who doesn't like
And
video
movies.
games? Or at least, I should say, who doesn't like good video games? Yeah. So, except this one, I'm not gonna lie, it boils my bubbles. That's right.
I would
Boils
just
my bubbles.
Rustles your jimmies.
it's
Yes, rustles my
it's
jimmies, if that's what you said.
it's frustrating to see this. Basically, at the end of the day, it is very frustrating to see this.
We're just gonna talk about how angry we are about it, but not actually talk about what it is.
Okay,
Yeah,
should I
I hate it.
explain?
It makes me so angry. No, our next story is about Netflix moving into video games.
Oh my god.
Just let it sink in. Just let it sink in, everybody.
If you
Get the
can't
idea.
beat them, join the video game market.
Do you know what I think? Unacceptable! I got the throw on my sound. I'm
You think it's
heavy.
because of Peacock?
It is going
It is.
to.
Well, it's because they are having much slower growth than usual.
Yeah, 'cause
They have had the worst slowdown in subscriber growth in 8 years. which is
Because-
why
Yeah,
they're
that's
adding
also
this new
the-
attraction.
Yeah, they have
because basically they have multiple companies vying for streaming service eyes. They have HBO Max, which is kind of competing with them on the same level.
Hulu, Disney Plus, Peacock, they're
Like-
all over the place.
Def-
There's so many more
yeah.
that I can't name them.
Amazon Plus, yeah,
And-
they've got more competitors now more than ever.
And they basically are losing a lot of money because basically at the end of the day they don't know what their market is because they go for quantity over quality.
Yeah. On Tuesday
And-
that they announced that they're offering video games to no extra cost. I mean, that's a plus, I guess. But actually, I'm wondering what plan in particular. I'm wondering if it's just all the plans because there's a premium, there's a plus or whatever. There are
It's-
like 3 different ways you could pay.
They're
It-
they're banking on that. I mean, that's a very risky business.
It feels like they have no idea what they're doing.
It basically does. It basically does feel like they have no idea what they're doing. They're
Yeah.
trying to find stuff that will stick to the wall and hoping that will stay.
Yeah.
Basically, at the end of the day, they are more afraid of HBO Max because HBO
They didn't say when this service is going to happen, what kind of games they're going to be developing.
And-
They're
and-
taking another leap by offering video games that intends to produce itself as part of what is described as a multi-year expansion. That's right. The Los
Like-
Gatos, California company telegraphed the move last week when it disclosed the hiring of a veteran video game executive, Mike Verdu, to
I
explore
actually-
potential opportunities in that field of entertainment.
I actually just wanted to say that I have both Netflix and Hulu, and I was just looking at the Netflix website to see what they had, but I barely use Netflix honestly because I don't really think they have like as much stuff.
I use it all the time.
No, they don't. They don't, and it's a mixture of the fact that they don't understand. They want to have content for everybody, and by doing that, they have content that's more quantity over actual quality, really good content. You can see stuff like, you can have stuff like faking it. You can have stuff like the
Because they
weird,
used to have a
weird
monopoly.
furry, the weird furry makeup thing or stuff.
That's the issue. They were the first ones to go big into streaming. So they've had the monopoly for so long, and now the market is finally competitive. To where now their product is like, okay, you're not offering anything special, and there's other people offering better stuff for more deals. So in their view, they're essentially just trying to maximize their profit instantaneously, super quickly. So they're going to try and just push this video game thing, make it for free to where, okay, like it'll be super advertising for people to buy into, and they're hoping that can compensate for their profit losses.
What kind of video games you think Netflix is going to make?
I think like Google Stadia make like Google Stadia level games, like where they're
What
not
is that?
good. Where they're not good. See, you don't even know Google Stadia. No one knows what Google Stadia is because Google Stadia is a joke. This whole like idea
like-
that
Going to be incorporated with a said console, or is it going to be like they're making their own console or like game system with it?
like it's a lot. It's a lot of questions that need to be answered. That's basically what it is. It's
Okay, here's my theory.
If it's a touchscreen video game on the TV, I'm gonna laugh.
I'm going to
No,
laugh. as
I
well.
was gonna say they were just gonna like rebrand Pac-Man or something like that.
Or they're gonna get the Ouya developers and create some really
They're,
bad
they're,
Ouya.
they're,
No, they should just make Wii Sports on Netflix. That'll sell.
oh yes,
I think
that was mine. I
think that they are going to make video game versions of movies and TV shows that they have.
Oh, that's
It's
going to be
like-
horrible.
like-
That has a horrible track record.
It does, and I don't think it'll get any better. But that is what I'm assuming they're going to do.
That just imagine a point-and-click adventure game of Orange is the New Black, or something like
They're
that,
gonna do.
or something like the RPG of Army of the Dead, or something like that.
Point-click video games market's really only for like PC players anyway, so I don't know how well it's going to go over with like casual people that just like go on the TV.
Yeah.
So I got a question for you all. What is your favorite streaming service?
HBO Max.
HBO Max.
Yep.
Okay.
HBO Max is basically killing it right now because they know that they have a lot of content and I don't want to get into everything that like I know about it, because it's going to be a lot better and it's going to improve a lot more over time.
Okay, so HBO Max. Trevor, Francis. No, not Trevor. Thomas. I'm so sorry. I keep doing that to you,
Yeah.
Trevor.
No, I haven't tried all of them yet. So I've only tried Netflix and Hulu, but I'm like very stuck in the 80s, and like they have like all the shows from the 80s. So I definitely like Hulu.
It's a lot of like unique content.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. People will be like, oh, they charge more to have less ads. But honestly, like, I don't mind the ads. Like, they're just like,
it's like what you're watching regular TV, how they did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
People did that for decades. It's just commercial. Francis, do you have a favorite?
HBO Max more so because they have the most unique like content. So it's like any other streaming service, I feel like I'm basically.
How much does HBO Max cost?
For the non-commercial one, which I say is really awesome, is $15 a month.
Yeah,
that's a lot of dollars a month. Always hears for me.
But
what do they have?
But to me, like, they have stuff like from DC, they have HBO stuff, they have stuff from Cinemax, they have stuff from like recent release movies, same day and date movies. They have a bunch of things that I'm just.
Yeah, no, they have a massive library and a lot of stuff that most of their streaming services don't offer for a good price, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm gonna get yelled at.
Basically the same price, but for less.
I feel like I'm gonna get yelled at, but my favorite is Netflix. I love Netflix. I watched the entire second season of Never Have I Ever last night.
Mention that,
like educational stuff and documentaries on Curiosity Stream.
What'd you
That's
say?
super cheap.
Curiosity Stream.
Because like Netflix have a lot of Netflix exclusives. Is Stranger Things like still like the big thing? I mean, I don't really watch it.
Yeah, it's still the big thing, but like season 3 didn't hit as well as they wanted to.
That's true, but Netflix, what are you thinking? You're my favorite, Netflix. I love you so much, but this is an awful idea, and you're only gonna make people upset. At least I think, unless you, by some sort of miracle, make the greatest video game ever made.
They're not going to.
Hey, Trevor! Don't you talk bad about my Netflix like that? No, you can't.
Try
You
Netflix
can't.
video game.
What'd you say?
I'm gonna try one of their video games.
Well, yeah, I mean, it comes with the service. I'm gonna try it out when it happens, whenever it does. They don't know.
Wait, does it come? Does it come with the streaming service, or do I have to rent a DVD before I can?
They don't say.
I have a personal theory of when it's going to come. Probably late 2024, probably.
2024. What makes you say that late?
Because they have to work on development and they have to figure out how it's going to interface with the user interface and stuff like that. They have to figure out a lot of problems before they say, yeah, we're going to release it in later than you actually think it's going to come out.
Yeah. I wonder if this is going to get into an area where other streaming services are going to do this, or other ridiculous.
I don't think.
Like, how would you react if HBO Max started making video games?
I don't think Warner Discovery are interested in that. No.
Well, do you think you would have said this about Netflix 3 years ago with Dave?
I can tell you quite honestly, the Warner Media is not interested in that stuff. They're going to try to repair all the relationships that they kind of broken during the Warner Bros. And AT&T deal. I can't go into everything about that, but I just know that Warner Media is not interested in that.
Well, which one does Warner Media run? HBO Max, I'm assuming.
HBO Max.
Okay. Well, let's say Hulu. What are the other ones going to do? Because
Disney
we all think this is a terrible idea. I am sure there are
Disney-
people out there who love this idea.
Disney
What
is
are they gonna
Disney is losing money, so they're not going to want to develop games.
Well, that's why Netflix is developing games, because they're losing
they're doing it
subscribers.
for a profit incentive because they know there's a big market for it.
They're losing subscribers.
Yeah, I feel like Disney.
Well,
would
not
actually
losing.
be-
They're getting less than they thought they would.
And I feel like Disney would actually be in a way better position to make video games since they've already partially developed and published video games before.
I personally
They
think
have, like, a way closer attachment to actual like developers, both first and third party developers of video games.
Personally, I think this is just my opinion. This is not WMSC's opinion. I personally think Disney is not the long-term deal of Fox was never a good idea. They are in massive debt and they're never going to pull out of it. If they didn't have the parks, they would have been failing right now.
There's no way that any of us could know that for sure, but you definitely do have your beliefs about it.
They need to have Pac-Man and Donkey Kong.
If I don't see a version of Pac-Man where there's a little, what's the thing called, a Demogorgon running around?
Yeah,
that's the Stranger
I
Things
honestly
thing.
don't know what that thing is called.
It's the Stranger Things monster.
I think they already have a Stranger Things game.
I was kidding, but I wouldn't be surprised to see other streaming services venture into other stuff like this, or they become multimedia conglomerates, if you will.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised because really, we were talking about it a couple stories ago with forest fires and the environment. It comes down to capitalism for most of these companies, especially entertainment companies. They just want to make money. And Netflix is no different in wanting to make video games. Now, if I'm wrong and they happen to make, I don't know, something amazing, better than Halo. Halo is my favorite video game. I love Halo. Better than that, then I don't know, I'll eat my own shoe on air. But I don't think this will go very well.
No, it won't.
And Cam, I feel like this is a story that you need to read for us. So take it away. What's happening in Maine?
Okay. Cocaine disguised as cake seized from a vehicle in Maine. A New York man and a Maine woman are facing charges over cocaine disguised as cake that was seized from their vehicle. The Maine Drug Enforcement Agency said Wednesday. That. Police stopped the car on Interstate 295 in Gardner on Tuesday, and a drug-sniffing dog found 4 pounds of cocaine worth $200,000 on the street, said the MDEA. About $1,900 in cash was seized. About 2 pounds of cocaine was disguised as a marble cake with coffee grounds used to cover up the scent, officials said. The two were released on bail and are expected in court on Wednesday. There is no way that I just read that. Are you kidding me?
All real.
Are you kidding me?
This is the greatest story I've ever heard, and this just goes to show how terrible a state Maine is. I'm gonna continue my hate on this state for no reason, but this made me smile last night as I'm reading this story. It's like, this is a sketch comedy written out for like a fake news thing, and I was like, nah, the AP News would never make a fake article like that. But yeah, so you know, they disguise cocaine with as a marble cake. Yeah,
I give them props. That is really creative. I gotta say.
Reduce a year out their sentence for creativity, guys.
Yo, I'm saying though. First of all, $200,000?
Yeah.
Yo, what?
How big was this cake?
Honestly,
it was a wedding size cake at this point.
It had to be. It had to be a wedding size cake.
You know what's also great? They also almost had $2,000 in cash with them. So
What?
maybe,
Like what?
Maybe they just took away another cake already. Maybe they had multiple cakes of cocaine just in their car.
Are you kidding me? I'm still trying to fathom that. They had they mix cake with coke. Yo,
hey, that's how you roll, and with coffee grounds too.
Yeah, like coffee grounds cake, and Coke. That's a recipe for disaster right there. You listen. If you want to end up in jail, do that.
It was almost success though. They had almost $2,000 in cash. Maybe it was working for a while.
They almost that's the crazy part about all that. They almost got away with it too. They almost got away with that. Are you kidding me?
I hope that I'm just really hoping that there was like a YouTube tutorial that they watched or like how to disguise cocaine, and like there was like a very small underground video where it's like just make it look like a cake, man, and that is how you get away with it. Step
Step
one, bake a
one.
cake.
Did they like bake the? I'm just wondering how they made it look like a cake. Like, do they bake it into the cake? Is it like?
I wish I
Yo,
had the information for that.
I want
I
a
really
picture of this
did.
cake.
I have to. I want to find a picture of this too. Like, are you? This is insane. This is insane.
You know what I really want to know is the reaction the cops had as like they bring the dogs in and they're like, oh, they probably don't have anything. It's just a cake. And then all of a sudden the dog's going crazy and they discover that much cocaine. It's like, what is the cop like? Do they initially laugh too with the story? Because I feel like I'd have to chuckle at least like a smile or something, like respect to you guys, because that was the most creative way to smuggle some drugs.
They win it. They win it. All time creativity.
Mm-hmm.
The main couple wins it.
I respect the hustle, and they deserve a Netflix show. Like, just I don't know. I need something to know what this couple was like. I need to know about their life now.
Wait a minute. I think I found a picture of it. All right, so since I'm on my phone, I'm just about to flip the camera real quick.
For the viewers, we might be seeing a picture
that
of said cake, and yep, it is a cake. It's definitely a cake.
Whole lot of
plenty
bills.
of cash. For those that can't see, they really did put cocaine in a cake, and I've never seen that much cash spread out on a table. But hey, shout out to Maine Police Department for catching the cocaine criminals.
I also like how they
Photos from AP.
like I like how they put up all the props around like the seal of arms or whatever that is. Like, I don't know if anyone else noticed that.
They framed the whole picture. That was very respectful of them.
It was a very nice, like, they had a whole photo shoot with it. Like,
it was like a Hall of Fame ceremony for those criminals. It's like, we have to give them at least some respect here. And
that's
on their way out.
That's a lot of cash. That is a lot of cash.
You know what I wonder though? You think they kept the cake? Or do you think they threw out the cake? How do you dispose of that? I think that's an interesting question. Is how do you dispose of that cake like that?
Hmm.
I think we need to interview all these police officers and see what they've eaten recently. And if any of them say cake, we know it's up.